And I have to turn down the volume on one of these, so it'll take a second because we don't want to have the echo.
We're streaming live.
And we are streaming one of these, so it'll take a second because we don't want to have the echo. Yep, and that's what I'm taking care of right now. Streaming one of these, so it'll take a second because we don't want to have the echo. Yep, and that's what I'm taking care of right now. Streaming one of these, so it'll take a second because we don't want to have the echo. Yep, and that's what I'm taking care of right now. All right. And everybody, hi, this is Joe Massaro. I am just trying to connect with, and everybody, hi, this is Joe Massaro. I am just trying to connect with, and everybody, hi, this is Joe Massaro. I am just trying. There we go. All right. And hallelujah. It is fixed.
All technical difficulties aside.
Yes. Hello, everyone, and welcome. I am so excited to have Eva Marie Everson with us today. I will share a little bit about her, but I just want to say welcome. I'm Joe Massaro, and welcome to Yahweh Sisterhood Book Club. And this is actually the 5th time that you have been with us.
Wow.
That is you have set an all-time record. Let me just say this.
I did? Oh my goodness.
Yeah, because I have been doing this, I think, for 15 years and recording actually for the last 4.
Mhm.
And it is just an honor to have you with us again.
Thank you.
Let me just say,
much.
if you'll be watching this on YouTube, please subscribe to the channel. But I'm just going to share a little bit about you. And I have to tell you that it's just a paragraph. And you are so much more than this paragraph, but I'm going to read it anyway. Eva Marie Everson is a multi-award-winning author and speaker who hails from the picturesque southern town of Sylvania, Georgia.
That's right.
She is CEO of Word Weavers International and the director of Florida Christian Writers Conference. She enjoys coaching new authors through her company, Pen in Hand. Eva Marie and her husband make their home in Central Florida. They are the parents of 3 fabulous children who have blessed them with the world's greatest grandchildren. I so get that. I so get
people will argue with me about that, but I understand the argument. So yeah.
Yes. And just so you know, we will say this throughout the time frame, but you can connect with you at EvaMarieEversonAuthor.com. Yes, because you want to connect with her and not the other account that's out there somewhere.
Yes, somebody is name squatting on my name.
Yes. Okay, so I said that this is the 5th time that you have been with us. Let me just share a little bit about the books that we have done before. So we did Dust.
We did.
The Ornament Keeper, The One True Love of Alice Ann, The Final Race that you wrote with, is it Eric Eichinger?
Yes,
I pronounced it right. Okay. I have to tell you, and I put that, it's still one of my favorite books.
Yes.
I just loved it so much.
The story of Eric Little.
Yes. The Chariots of Fire movie, and maybe that will strike a bell with everybody. Wonderful books. And this is the 3rd path.
The 3rd.
Oh my goodness.
A little different from what I usually do.
It is a little different, isn't it? But I have to tell you that, all right, so you see the book there, and obviously I have it in my hand as well. I had shared with you that I read a portion of it, but then I'm slowly now going to be going through the book. I did not want to rush this.
No, you can't.
Oh, no, you absolutely cannot. It is so incredible. But why don't you just share a little bit about the concept and tell us a little bit how this book came to be?
Well, it sort of kind of started, as we talked about earlier, it sort of kind of started at the Blue Lake Christian Writers Retreat, which is held in Andalusia, Alabama. And I believe I want to say it was 2017. I had decided for some strange, unexplainable reason that I was going to drive up to Andalusia rather than fly. I only did that one time. And so when I got there, it was a matter of having to rush in because I barely made it in time, rushed in, dumped my luggage in my room, rushed back out. And it just seemed like for the next 3 or 4 days of the retreat, it was just rush. You know, I never really got my bearings. But when I was in my room, which it wasn't very often, I was just in my room to sleep, basically. When I was in my room, I kept noticing that there was an 8.5 by 11-inch paper that had been folded in two. And it was sitting on the desk. And I just paid absolutely no attention to it. I just noticed that it was there. But when I was ready to leave, I looked back in the room to make sure that I had not left anything behind. And I saw that piece of paper. And something inside of me, the Holy Spirit, whispered into my heart and just said, pick it up. And so I went and got it, shoved it in my purse, drove back home. And it was about 3 days later before I emptied my purse on my bed. I do what I guess most of us do when we've traveled like that. Once we get home, we just take the purse and just dump it, it's like, because in the course of those days at writers' conferences, we have stuffed so many things into our purse. And so I just dumped it and that piece of paper came flying out. I saw that it was about a prayer labyrinth that was on the grounds of the conference center. Well, I had heard of prayer labyrinths, but I knew very, very little about it. And I just sat with that piece of paper and I was looking. It said this particular prayer labyrinth had 4 paths. It was the path of silence, the path of memory, the path of prayer, and then the path of questioning. And so wanting to know more about prayer labyrinths, because I just really didn't know much about them at all, began to study about prayer labyrinths. And I got my journal and I was journaling everything that I was learning about these labyrinths. And I just found myself completely intrigued by this. So that, it was taking up hours of my day. And then, coming to this understanding that prayer labyrinths are not, because a lot of people think they're new age. They're not. They're so old age. We don't even realize how old they are. The earliest mothers and fathers of our faith use prayer labyrinths as their means of prayer and kind of centering into a communication with God. So for a little period of time there, I kept thinking, I would really love to have my own prayer labyrinth. But long story short, I have nowhere for a prayer labyrinth. So as I'm journaling, I thought, well, why can't I create my own prayer labyrinth? So I just began to lay that out. Well, what does that look like? The path of silence. And what does that look like? The path of memory. And then I made this decision that the path of prayer really should come last. And so I was going to do the path of questioning first, as in third, but first before prayer, and then do the path of prayer. And that very first day, as I did this, I took the path of silence. I wrote a scripture down. I meditated on that for just a little while. And then I went into the path of memory. And this is when I was just writing to God, just, just pouring out my thoughts, my feelings. This is what's happening to me today. This is how I feel about it, things like that. And then I got to the path of questioning. Well, I had 4 questions for God, 3 at that time, 3 questions for God that I know will never be answered this side of heaven. So I just wrote them down. Well, here they are. And just to give you an example, one of them is, why me? Why did you love me so much? You pursued me. What, this broken shell of a woman that you would not let go of. You were relentless in your pursuit of me. Why? I don't think I'll ever understand. And then, a couple of others that are just deeply personal. And so then day 2 rolled around and I found another scripture and I wrote my memories and I got to the path of questioning again. And I said, well, this is going to be monotonous because it's going to be the same 3 questions every day. And just as I'm writing this, I hear again the Holy Spirit say, not my question, not your questions, my questions.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, Lord, you're omniscient. How can you have questions? And what answers are there out there that you don't know already? What questions are you talking about? And suddenly I heard the words, where are you? What is this thing you have done? Where did you come from and where are you going? What are you doing here, Elijah? Do you believe I can? What do you want? What do you want from me? Where's your faith? Just hundreds of questions that are within the scriptures that God asked those who he was dealing with at the time.
Mhm.
And so I just went to the Bible. I opened it up. I got a ruler, literally got a ruler, and went down until I found the first question mark. And it was a question from God, where are you? And of course, this was the question he posed to Adam and Eve after they had sinned. And so then I began to answer that. I started out by studying the whole story itself,
Mhm.
and then underlined different things, like as I was writing things down. Oh, that's good. Oh, that's important. And then turned that question back to me, because theologians have often said this was not a physical question. This was not a where are you? Can't find you, because
You're
God
right.
exactly where they were. But this was
And what had happened?
yes, what have you done? Kind of thing, because the relationship between us has been broken. And so there was the question. And I realized that these were questions that were not going to be answered in a day. And in fact, where did you come from and where are you going? Which comes from Genesis, I think it's Genesis 16:6 or Genesis 16:8, but it's a story of Hagar.
Mhm.
It took me like 2.5 weeks to answer that question. Just writing every day, just sitting down, journaling. And so after about 1.5 years of this and having this change inside of me, growing deeper in love with God, growing deeper in my relationship with God, I went to Edie Melson, who is the director of the Blue Ridge Conference. I teach there every year. I teach fiction there every year. And I said, I have something different I want to do. And I only want to open it up to 12 people. And I said to her, we'll be lucky if we get 5, but I'm happy with that. Well, not only did we have 12, we had a wait list.
Wow.
And it was such an amazing thing that happened in those hours that I spent with this class, that I was asked to do it again. And then I was asked to do it over here. And then I was asked to do it over there. And several months went by. I'm talking to Rachel Hauk, and she said, where's the book?
Mm.
And so I started working on the book, but it was a long process, because this isn't something you take lightly. This isn't just something you just create, it was blood, sweat, and tears to write this book. And I knew that there's no way we're going to be able to list all of the hundreds of questions. And so I pulled 26 questions, because I thought, if the reader will take at least a couple of weeks per question, at least that, then you're talking about a whole year.
Sure.
But if only a week, then you're talking half a year of a journey. And I think that's excellent.
Mhm.
To grow closer to the Lord, and to understand that when God asks questions, it's not because he doesn't know the answer. It's because he wants to communicate with you.
Yes.
He wants to talk with you, and he wants you to talk with him.
When you're talking about why me, and I know that in 2007, I had a very severe car accident and had a traumatic brain injury, and that God, brought me out of that. And that's a whole story. But my questions since then have been so many of what you're talking about. And my heart is to just find that deeper relationship and this journey that he has me on. I don't want to miss him, I guess, is what
Right.
I'm saying.
Exactly.
I don't want to miss what
Yeah.
God has for me. I have questioned, why did you bring me back from where I was? You know what? It doesn't matter. That's a question that, is just not important at this point in time. It is, what do you want me to do and how can I draw closer? So this, I have to tell you, is so incredibly timely for all of us. And so I'm so grateful that you did this. Maybe you could read just a little section of the book that you're talking about, so
Happy
people
to.
maybe can get a little bit of a better understanding.
Well, I have often said that this story begins in 2017 when I was at Blue Lake. But as I started writing the book, I realized that that wasn't true, that the real beginning goes back to 2002. So in section 1, I titled it The Real Beginning. This is what the Lord says: stand at the crossroads and look for the ancient paths and ask where the good way is, and walk in it, and you will find rest for your souls. Jeremiah 6:16. The sun rose full mast over the verdant hills of Galilee, casting harsh light along the sand-colored plains and lifting the hue of an already brilliant sky to a more vibrant sapphire. We had left Nazareth only a short while earlier. We 6 journalists, 1 Israel Ministry of Tourism representative, and 1 tour guide named Miriam, to head into the ancient ruins of Zippori, known also as Sepphoris. I wiped June-inspired sweat from the line of my brow as Miriam spoke words she'd repeated for 25 years or more, encouraging those who heard her to find the spiritual connection in the land where Jesus grew up, where he lived with his family, played with his siblings, the towns where he worked, the country where he strapped on leather sandals to begin a 3.5-year journey, telling all within earshot that the God of their forefathers loved them still, loved them more, in fact, and wanted them to return to a deeper relationship than mere religion could offer. The earth beneath my sandals crunched in welcome as I stepped into the vastness of a Roman theater, once proud and boasting stone seats for 4,500. I closed my eyes as Miriam continued, hoping I could hear them, those who sat and watched actors perform their craft. At times, those spectators were as silent as the stone around them, but then at an act's end, they cheered as eloquently as the birds whose songs now rose on a wave of dry heat around me. Remnants of carved columns lay among the dust, displayed but no longer useful for holding up much but the heavy air. We have every reason to believe, Miriam told us, that as tectons or stonemasons, Jesus and his father Joseph would have been among the craftsmen who helped rebuild Zippori during the 1st century of our common era. In his day, most especially during his youth, one of the largest restoration projects in Israel's history took place in Zippori. We gaped in wonder, wetting dry lips with tongues thirsty for water. Jesus and Joseph, who lived and worked less than 5 miles southeast of the large Roman-influenced city, could have, probably would have, been among the number of laborers, Miriam told us. I gazed over my shoulder, hoping for a glimpse of the young Messiah walking alongside his father, tools and small sacks of food to sustain them for the day, carried in hands roughened by their trade. Robes billowing in the light breeze of their steps, their faces turned toward each other, their smiles broad enough to show pearl white teeth against Mediterranean bronze skin. I reached out to touch the rough and faded carving that remained along the curve of one column and decided that, yes, he could have placed his hand there too. He could have pushed the chisel into the stone and tapped. We kept moving. We saw the Mona Lisa of the Galilee, felt a gentle breeze as we moved along the tree-lined city limits, which welcomed us back to where our journey into this fragment of history began. I noticed them then, the places where men sat and discussed the things of God, similar in shape to the amphitheater arranged like a horseshoe, those seats of debate. Questions, 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 Miriam would later say to me. When it comes to the things of God, hafak ba, vahafak ba, turn it over and turn it over. A gardening term, but it fits here as well. And so I have, in some ways, since that day in Zippori, I have turned it over and turned it over until the soil of my spirit, the rich earth of who I am, is ready for the harvest.
I could almost feel myself walking in those shoes and just wondering what it would have been like to be with the Messiah and his father. Oh my, last night I was speaking with someone and they had said they had gone to Nazareth and that they stood and sat on a little stone wall and just looked around,
Mhm.
just wondering what it would have been like to see Jesus walking through the streets
Yeah.
and just yearning to get that closer relationship with God. And this is so incredible that why don't you tell us a little bit about the difference between a labyrinth and a maze? I
Mm.
think that would be really important for people to know.
Well, a maze is created to confound you. It's created to confuse you. You walk in, you turn right, and then you turn left, and then you turn right, and you hit a wall.
Mhm.
But a labyrinth is built with one path that circles and circles and circles until it hits the center and then comes back out in an opposite direction.
Mm.
So you are never confused. You are never left dumbfounded. You are not perplexed in any way. It allows you to center yourself. So for example, if you were walking the labyrinth, and again, it's in that somewhat circular kind of motion that does this. If you are doing that, then you are literally centering yourself. You are, if you're on the path of silence, let's say, you can walk the path of silence and not try to figure out where you're going to go next. You can center only on silence. You can center only on memory. You can center only on questions. You can center only on prayer. And
Mm.
it's designed that once you reach the center, you have then kind of come to that intimate place with God. And you can sit there. There's typically there's a little bench or a chair or something like that in the center of a prayer labyrinth. You can then sit there and just be quiet before the Lord.
So is that then what we see on the cover of your book, what you're talking about?
That is a labyrinth. Yes, it is a labyrinth. And the artist who created the cover of the book just did a magnificent job. I was like so blown away when I saw this.
It is quite, now I have a much better understanding of what, because I always am interested in what covers people design and why.
Yeah. Yeah.
So so we talked about labyrinths and how they're very different. What were the paths in the labyrinths you discovered in Alabama?
Well, they were those four paths.
Okay.
They were, the path of silence. And by the way, the following year, I went back and I found that labyrinth.
Mhm.
And I actually carved out some time to go and walk it. And it was such a wonderful thing to get to do.
Yeah.
To just say, oh, I found you.
Yeah.
It was so wonderful.
So
It took me a lot longer to journal the labyrinth than it did to walk it, which I thought was kind of interesting. But I was so grateful for the opportunity to do it that way.
yeah. So why do you think the first path is the path of silence?
Because especially today, we are bombarded by noise. It's constant, isn't it? It's
It sure is.
phones, it's our televisions, it's our computers. We think we cannot walk into the house without turning the TV on. We cannot get in the car without turning some source of music on or making a phone call. I'm notorious for that. This is when I'm going to catch up,
the same thing.
things like that. But one of the things that I discovered was that true silence is a difficult thing to find. True silence.
Yeah.
If we think I'm going to sit in silence and we listen, we'll discover that there's just noise going on around us all the time, whether it's outside noise or the inside noise. It's the hum of the refrigerator. It's, the dog growling or in its sleep or whatever, it's just never totally quiet. Ironically, the words silent and listen have the same letters. So how can we listen to what God is saying to us if we're not first silent? And
I love that point so much.
Takes us on a whole new path.
It does. When I read that, I was like, oh my gosh, I never realized that.
Yeah.
And silence, I have to tell you, is very, very difficult.
It is.
It is so difficult. And when I was reading that, I was like, okay, so I need to find a place of silence. And it was hard to find.
It is hard to find. And in fact, it dawned on me that in my whole life, I have only experienced true silence once, and it was a fluke kind of thing, because I thought about it, I thought, well, when I was in my mother's womb. Well, no, because then I could hear her heartbeat, which
Yes.
kind of brought me to a whole new level of, how marvelous is that? I heard my mother's heartbeat. But I was in Northern California with some friends, and I was at the Jedediah Smith National Forest. I think it's a state park, actually. So it's a national state park.
I think it's a state park.
Yeah. And it's, the redwoods are there, and
Oh,
you look up and you can't even see the tops of the trees, and they're just huge. I mean, you can drive your automobile through them if they're, carved just right and things like that. And so it was myself and two of my friends, and we just kind of, I don't know what happened. We just kind of separated and started going our own way. And at some point I stopped, I guess, to look at a tree or something in the tree. I don't know. But all of a sudden I realized I don't hear anything.
mhm.
I don't hear anything. I mean, I didn't hear, a bird twitter. I didn't hear a leaf, like, shimmering in the breeze. I heard nothing. There was no sound of an airplane. There was no sound of a car. There was absolutely nothing. I was totally wrapped in silence. And I literally held my breath because I didn't even want to hear myself breathing. And I just remember thinking, God, this is your sanctuary. This is fabulous, and then I stepped back out of it and back into the world. But for this moment, there was nothing but me and God. And it was a beautiful thing. It was the only time in my life I've ever experienced anything like that.
Wow. So out of all that you're talking about, do you think silence is the hardest out of those things, or
Mhm.
yeah,
Until we learn it, until we learn to embrace it. And then I think, sometimes it's very difficult for us to talk about whatever it is that's going on in our lives. Like, okay, I'm going to journal this now. I'm going to talk to you, God, about what's going on in my life. And one of the things that I say in the book is you can lie to anybody, but you cannot lie to God.
yes,
So someone says to you, how are you today? You can say, I'm fine. And you're not. Your life is full of just crud. It's just not good right now. But
yeah,
oh, fine. And they go, oh, that's good to hear. How are you? Oh, good. Okay. And then we just keep on going. But with God, you can't do that.
yeah,
Because if you want to, if you're like, okay, I'm going to talk to you, God, about what's going on in my life, and it's all good. And, you can just kind of hear God up on his throne saying, yeah, come again. Because I don't think so. To allow ourselves to be totally honest, it's hard enough to be honest with yourself sometimes.
sure, absolutely.
Okay? Now let's get real honest with God, and let's say, this is what's going on in my life. This is what's going on in my heart. This is what's going on in my head. And can I just tell you, God, I am angry, or I am hurt, or, any of the other emotions that we have, just to be honest with him and say, this is how this is affecting me. Because too often we just bottle that in
Yeah,
and push it down, because, we're supposed to be Christians. We're not supposed to have troubles, right? It's not true.
it's not true at all.
Yeah.
When I speak before women, one of the things I like to talk about is something you just touched on is, we go into church or we see somebody and it's like, how are you? Yeah, I'm great.
Mhm.
And we are very good at wearing masks.
Yes, we are.
We
Mhm.
are so good at it. And I say that because I know, because I have done it.
Mhm.
I have
Of
lived
course,
a
we all
good
do.
portion of my life like that.
Yeah.
And to be able to just, say, if you feel it's a safe place to do that, what is going on.
What
And
is the truth here? Yeah,
yes, and the safest place that I can think of is to be at the feet of Jesus and to just
absolutely.
talk about the things that, like you're saying, are really deep inside of us that we might be even afraid to even look at.
And he won't turn us away.
And he won't.
Say you're not allowed to feel that way.
Right.
Say, oh, that's dumb and stupid. I don't understand why you think that.
Yes.
It's okay to go to him and say, this hurts, or this makes me laugh,
Yes.
makes me angry. Or, you know what, Jesus, I'm just so in love right now with this or that, I just, or even your fears.
Mm,
What are your fears? Because sometimes we think if I don't say them out loud, then it doesn't happen. But we can take that to God. And then because we have found ourselves in a place of silence, we can then stop long enough to listen.
to listen.
That's
Yes.
the point right there. It's
That
not
is it.
talking, listening. Yeah.
Listening. Yeah.
Mm.
And you can't do both at the same time.
Mhm.
And I love how I'm just fascinated how both of those words just have those same letters and it's not by chance.
No.
It is not by chance. So what do you hope readers will glean from this?
Well, I hope that they will find a deeper relationship with God.
Mm,
That they will realize that there is someone standing in the center of that labyrinth who's just waiting for them to walk forward. He's not going to force you to talk to him. He's not going to force you to listen to him. I mean, there have been a few times in my life when he's forced me to listen, but that's after a relationship has been established,
Right.
It's like, I need you to listen to me. I need you to listen to me. I will get to you later, God. I'll get to you later. I really, really will, because I'm doing all this work for you right now. And then the next thing I know, my back goes out. I'm lying on the sofa. I'm listening. So, sometimes it gets my attention that way. But I just want people to know how crazy in love God is with them. And wants a relationship with them, that he wants you to talk to him and he wants you to listen when he speaks to you, and that it's not all about reprimands. It's about love. It's not a long list of do's and don'ts with God. It's about a genuine relationship with your Heavenly Father. And that's what happens because we have become so consumed in life, especially these days, we have so few times of quiet and solitude.
Yes.
That we have to steal these times away. We are going to have to learn to recognize God's voice again. And I believe that on the Labyrinth, you can.
I so believe that as well. I have to tell you that I was trying to find a quiet spot, and I went into the garage and sat in the car. Because it was the only quiet spot that I could find.
You can do that. I can't do that in Florida.
Oh no, not in Florida. Oh no, oh no.
No, but we do. Susanna Wesley. I think it's Susanna. Anyway, the mother of Charles and John Wesley,
yes,
mothers of Methodism, had 18 children. And she would, with 18 children running around, which she homeschooled, she would throw her apron over her head and they would know to go silent.
wow.
That was her time. She needed quiet time with God. That was her time.
I so love that. I raised 5 kids, so I can't imagine all of those kids.
That would be insane.
Okay, so what's next for you? I guess like you've done the book, you've been on this journey. Are you speaking?
Still on the journey.
There's still on the journey.
Hundreds of questions to answer. Yeah, and some of them are applicable and some are not. I just that I was trying to think I've been writing for walk.com and just kind of this continuation of these questions in the Bible, and then how they affect us. And I just wrote one for them that was I believe it was from Isaiah, and God is asking Isaiah, who compares to me? And he's talking about all these people, the people of Israel were worshiping all these idols. They had incorporated idolatry into their worship of God. And he says, who compares to me? And so it took me, and I said to my editor, well, this took longer than I thought it would, because I thought it was going to be a real quick article that I was going to write. But if I'm going to write it, I've got to also answer it. And then I began just to look at, all right, where are the idols in my own life? What do they look like? And again, that just takes you on a soul journey that you have to be honest about. You have to be honest about it. And just discovering that there are things now that I used to say, oh, I love this, oh, I love that, and I enjoy doing this, I enjoy it. And I go, I don't know. It's taking me away from what I want to do with God right now. And that doesn't mean that, every pleasurable thing is like a no-no, because that's not true at all. I love to take long walks. I love to go shopping. I love, meeting my friends for coffee and things like that. There's those things that you do that you just love to do. That's not what I'm talking about. It's just the time stealers that I had to say, okay, where are the time stealers? And be honest about those.
I just love that, because I'm looking at that in my life.
Mhm.
And you're very surprised when you start thinking about that, and what is taking you away from what you really need to be focused on.
Yeah.
So let's shift a second, if we could, to word weavers, if we could.
Okay.
You are the president, Word Weavers International, yay. I am president of a local chapter here in Fort Wayne, Indiana, which I so love. It's a virtual one, and I have to tell you that just building those relationships with people have been so wonderful. But maybe you could just share a little bit about that and the Florida Christian Writers Conference.
Sure, I'd be happy to. Word Weavers International is a 501c6 ministry. We began with 5 of us sitting around a dining room table here in Central Florida. We were all writers in some capacity, and just saying, how can we help each other? That was a little over 25, almost 26 years ago. And it has now grown to over 1,000 members. We have 50 traditional chapters. Those are the chapters where the people like meet in person. They're all over the United States. And we have one traditional chapter in South Sudan, Africa.
Yes.
And yeah, so excited about that. And then we have right at 50 online groups, and you're the president of an online group. Now, that started several years back when one of the members that who came to Word Weavers Orlando was moving to Ohio. And we had a small group that had broken off from Word Weavers Orlando that was just for fiction writers. So we met Word Weavers Orlando, but then we also met at a secondary time for our fiction group. And we did not want to lose her because she was such a viable part of our group. And so I said, well, can we just Skype her in? And so, once a month we would get together and we would Skype her in. And then Word Weavers International purchased Florida Christian Writers Conference in 2012. So 2013 was our first conference. And her name was Shelley. And Shelley came into the office where, I was the director, Mark Hancock, and I were the directors of the Florida conference at that time. And she said, it's a shame we can't do something like this on a bigger scale. Why can't you just have online groups? And then she walked out, and Bruce Brady was sitting at the desk, sitting with a long table desk. And I looked over at Mark and I said, well, what would that look like? And we just started talking about it. And Bruce started throwing some things in as well. And he said, I don't see any reason why you couldn't do this. And I said, well, why don't you run with it?
I love that.
Yeah. And he said, okay, and so he became our first director of online groups. And I tell you, I'll never forget. And I think it was either after this meeting or 1 year later, once we had gotten everything established. Just cannot remember when it was exactly. But we were walking out of the office, and Bruce went this way and I went this way. And he said something, and I turned around and I noticed that he had a limp. And I said something to him later. I said, you're limping. And he said, my back is bothering me. And I said, oh, you think it's sciatica? And he said, I don't know, but I'm going to the doctor when I get back. And it turned out it was cancer. And so we lost Bruce to cancer, but heaven gained him. And in the meantime, Susan Simpson became his assistant to help him out. She is now the director of online groups. She's done such a wonderful job.
Wonderful.
If nothing else, just to honor Bruce But yeah, that's one thing about word weavers. If you come up with an idea, I'll let you run with it. It's a good idea. So we are actually about to launch open mic nights.
I'm so excited for this.
Me too, me too. And so and all that came about when Andrew Jackson, who is the president of Delmarva, I think that's in New Jersey. I don't know, maybe it's in New Hampshire. I don't know, but anyway, it's way up there.
It's new something.
It's new, so I think. I don't even know. Oh my gosh, it's terrible. No, is it Delaware? It might be Delaware. Anyway, it's one of the northern states.
Okay.
And he's going to kill me that I don't know that. But he said, well, what do you think about open mic nights? And let's let the published authors within Word Weavers, you know, like have this opportunity to put a flashlight on their work. Like, you know, think about like the open mic nights in the old kind of pubs, you know, and they would sing or do their poetry or whatever. Well, we're gonna do our work. And so I said, I think it's a great idea. Run with it. So he's doing a fabulous
I like that.
job.
Run with it.
Run with it. Yeah. So if I think it's a good idea and you came up with it, you get to head it up. I can't do it all. But the whole purpose of Word Weavers is to equip writers and to strengthen them in their craft, to help them to see what it is that, you know, that works for them within their craft, and then some of their weaker areas. And we all have those weak areas.
Sure do.
So if, you know, for anyone who's listening, if you're interested in knowing more, it's word-weavers.com. And if you want to know more about the Florida conference, word-weavers.com/Florida events. That's coming up.
Yes.
October the 19th, I believe, is our first day.
Wow, that's so exciting. I would so love to be there this year. Obviously, I can't.
Would
because
love for
I have
that,
to do
yeah.
surgery, but I am planning for next year, I have to tell you. I am planning to be there and I cannot wait. Okay.
Our focus next year will be nonfiction. This year it's fiction. Last year it was children's. That doesn't mean that we don't do everything else, but we do have a one-day intensive that starts right before the conference. And we're just bringing in some fabulous names this year. I'm so excited.
You do. I am so excited about it as well. But so this is the third path, finding intimacy with God on the path of questioning. I encourage you to get this book and I had told Eva Marie that I purchased some journals that'll be here today. And then I realized my whole left arm is going to be all tied up and I won't be able to use it. And I'm left-handed. So
I was going to say, are you left-handed? Oh no.
I'm left-handed. Yes. I'm going to be speaking into my laptop and doing it that way for a while. So I'm so excited about this book and this journey. And I just encourage you to get it and to go on that walk.
Well, I've had a lot of people that told me the first time I read it, I just sat down and just read it all the way through and studied those scriptures and did no journaling. And now I have circled back around and I'm journaling as I just had to read it. And I was at a conference not too long ago. Man came up to me and he had his copy of the book, and you could tell he was about maybe, right in here. So he'd gotten about half of it read. I mean, the man just had tears in his eyes, and he said, "This is changing my walk with God." And he said, "You can see how far I've gotten. I'm just reading it right now. Then I'll go back and I'll journal through it." Whichever way works for you, that's fine. It's about your individual walk with Him.
Amen. Yes, it is. Okay, so remember, if you want to connect with Eva Marie, it's Eva Marie Everson author.com. Okay, and make sure you get to her. And I know that she would so love to hear from you.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. As always, I just love hanging out with you. And
thank you, Joe. You too.
Oh my goodness. Yes. And I hope to see you soon. Just enjoy the journey, enjoy the walk.
Absolutely.
And thank you. Let me just say this. Thank you for everything that you do.
Well, thank you,
for
Joe.
Authors and writers and people who think, maybe I have something I want to write, a story, whether it's their life story, something, that has pertained to them, or whether it's fiction, nonfiction. I'm getting ready next year to start my first series in a children's book, middle grade.
Yeah.
So I am very excited about that. And I have been so encouraged through Word Weavers and the people that I have met. And so many other authors. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. God bless you. And everybody,
You too.
don't forget, subscribe to the channel and hang out with us. Let me just say this. Oh, let me just say this. Next week, I am doing Escape from Amsterdam by Laura Lee Bliss. Oh my goodness. And then 2 days before my surgery, I'm doing the Mulberry Leaf Whispers with Linda Thompson.
Oh, good.
Oh, so those are going to be some really good books. So thank you, everyone, and we will see you soon. Thank you. Love you.
Bye.